Dreamy jams for the kids here at Sweetwater. Hey, Howie.
Are we recording?
Did we record that?
We recorded that.
Oh,
That felt majestic and right. All day and all night. We got the thumbs up from Sean back there in Mission Control. Listen.
Hey.
Here we are, Andy Timmons.
Man, it's so good to be back with my brother Greg.
Oh, always a good time. We always have good times
We
together.
have shared many good times. Yes, we have.
Many good times.
Yes.
Traveling around the world.
All around.
Doing our doings. Playing our plans.
Sometimes in front of people.
Eating our eatings.
Yeah, exactly.
And we find ourselves here at Sweetwater
Yeah.
for the weekend of Guitar Fest.
It is quite festive.
And it was suggested we get together and chew the gristle a little bit and play a little jammage. And that was fun, little textural little morsel.
Hendrixian, if you will.
Yes, nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with that. I'll do that all day.
So you brought your Starship Enterprise, replete with a variety of glorious implements.
Yeah, you know, I've got my variety of drives that I love, but it's all about usually, you know, just a little bit of drive and my halo, of course.
Yeah, your pedal of doom and destruction.
Yeah, but I can get into. I get into all kinds of trouble.
Yes.
Like I just did. I'm not used to sitting and doing this. Like I usually stand.
You're standing around, prancing around the stage like a banty rooster.
Exactly right.
Nothing wrong with it.
Roosters in space. That's more my thing. You know?
I like it. Now you were just at. You were doing a very festive thing at Abbey Road over there.
Oh my gosh!
In Fair Albion. Tell us a little bit about
crazy.
that.
A couple of buddies of mine wanted to do like a Beatles pilgrimage,
do
like site because I've been to the UK so many times, but I never really did go see the sites, to the Beatles and all that. But we actually started off with a day at Abbey Road.
Awesome.
This was a good tour. Then we ended up with a gig at the Cavern Club in Liverpool.
Awesome.
And so that's a nice book. And if you're a Beatle geek, to be in those rooms. And with all the history and everything that's happened there. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, I did a couple of tracks at Abbey Road.
Magnificent. That
That was kind of magnificent. Just to be in the room, but then to open up my guitar stand and hear it. It was one of the first times I remember recording because I did a solo piece. And I didn't wear headphones because just hearing it in the room, which was the way the early records were done.
Right.
You first start seeing the Beatles with headphones around like Rubber Soul. Man. Before that, they were just in the room and hearing what they could hear and going for it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and you hit a drum in there because I did a thing where I played all the instruments and get an old Ludwig set in there.
Right.
It was pretty magical. Yeah.
Yes.
So just walking in the footsteps of course, that's everybody knows that's ground zero for me. That all the Beatles. And
the Beatles.
Come on, they wrote a couple of tunes.
They did. They had some things going on.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. But the question was asked was there a pivotal time for either one of us that kind of was a light bulb moment, sonically or gig-wise?
Huh? Well, I'll tell you what. For me, gig-wise, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I always just wanted to play.
Well, for sure.
Gear-wise, there were various epiphanies over the years.
Yeah. When he first said that, I hadn't had this thought in a long time. Everybody knows I love a wet sound, right? But I remember it was before it was, I was under 21, but I remember standing outside a bar to hear this band, and the guitar player had an Echoplex.
Ah, yes.
And it's just like, I think that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. I love that ambient sound. And then as I started, then recognizing it on all along the Watchtower.
Right.
Or even I saw her standing there, the first Beatles, flip side of I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's all reverb drenched.
Right.
I guess that's my thing. So that was one of those things that just that's part of what makes up the sounds that I'm going for is that one moment. But otherwise it's just all the concerts. What was your first concert?
Well, the first concert, other than being with my parents at State Fair Park in Wisconsin and sing B.J. Thomas, raindrops keep falling on my head.
That's not bad.
The first concert I actually went to was Jackson Browne.
That's pretty cool.
At Summerfest.
Okay.
Which was pretty cool.
What year was that?
It would have been 1980.
Was Lindley still there?
You know what? I think he was.
Wow.
That would have been before I would have been cognizant.
You would have been cognizant of that, yeah, sure.
But I guess one of my first, I went to Muddy Waters pretty early. That was around the same time I saw Muddy Waters.
There you go.
And that was pivotal.
That's deep. That's deep, man.
Because I was
so great you got to see him.
I had been doing a lot of reading, as one does. Hendrix would say, "Oh, Muddy Waters," Clapton.
Oh, of course.
Talking about Muddy Waters.
Got to check him out.
Howlin' Wolf and da-da-da.
Yeah.
So I had the Muddy Waters record, Hard Again, which I suggest everyone.
That's one of the greatest sounding records.
Yes.
It's Johnny Winter.
Exactly.
It's one of the greatest sounding blues, or just any record. Just such a vibe in that room.
Yes,
right?
it sounds glorious.
It sounds amazing.
So there was a gal that I went to grade school with who, at Summerfest, it used to be, not as much anymore, but all the stages were sponsored by beer companies, right?
Okay.
So her dad worked for Pabst or maybe Old Style, I can't remember. Yeah. And so she was backstage. And I was walking past, she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Are you backstage? Can you get me back there?" So she got me backstage.
Oh my God.
So I was backstage for Corky Siegel opened up for Muddy Waters.
Wow.
I remember Corky Siegel asked me for a pen. And I was like, wow, Corky Siegel asked me for a pen. And then I was ready for Muddy, and I really wanted to meet him. But he walked in, and he had two gorgeous young gals on both arms, and they were both wearing these satin, like Muddy Waters tour jackets.
Wow.
And he had this look on his face like he was just stoned immaculate. And I couldn't say anything. All I did was look at him. But I knew right then and there, Andrew, what I wanted to do for a living. That was the day.
Mine was so completely different, I can't begin to tell you. But my first concert was Kiss on the Destroyer tour.
Ah, yes.
1976. I was telling somebody earlier. So my mom, I was 13 years old. My mom drops me off at Roberts Stadium in Evansville, Indiana. And, I had never been around any kind of smoking substance before. So my memory is I was in the very last seat in the very back of the arena. And it was obviously quite a spectacle because it's Kiss, and I was 13 and I was just really into them. But I don't remember like most of the show because all the smoke. I remember, what does that smell?
Right.
All the smoke is coming up.
What is this herb?
But it was kind of a day where I'd been playing, so that was kind of that lit the fuse too. Like, got to be a part of this.
I'm in.
And then little did I know, only whatever it was, 14 years later, I was opening for those guys and touring with them. So that was kind of one of those I couldn't have dreamed. I couldn't have dreamed of sitting here with you. Here we are. Here we are. A couple of guys just playing around. You're just such a fabulous player.
You, my friend. Are you kidding me?
Now we've done a couple of Andy Wood's Woodsheds over time.
Yes, we have.
So I can say that's some of my favorite times with you because we lived in the same house.
Yes.
So we get up in the morning. We're down there having our coffee. I'm here to tell you, he is this guy 24/7. He's full on Greg all the time, and we just laugh so much and have such a good time. But we had one fest one day where were just so much love for Randy Bachman and BTO.
Oh yeah.
So when we're talking about my first two albums I bought with my own money was Kiss Alive and the Raspberries' Greatest Hits.
Okay.
Kind of bookends there if you get my pop and heavy rock. But the first single I bought was Let It Ride.
Let It Ride.
Ding-a-ding.
That's right.
And there was that, the back would be out. That's still one of my favorite solos. And talking about sounds of records like the Heart Again, the sound of that 45, because the hi-hats are just swashing.
Yes.
Just this noise of it. But that was like the Beatles.
Yeah.
Ringo was a great washer. He'd wash on the ride, and the hi-hats were always just so open. So that song connected, but what a great body of work. Randy Bachman doesn't get talked enough.
No, he does not.
About enough, you know.
I remember I had that first Not Fragile record.
Yeah, oh gosh.
And then I had the 4-wheel drive. I bought that with my hard-earned cash. And then I remember my sister, at that point in the 70s, one of her jobs was she was like the nanny for this family that owned the Excalibur car company. Remember Excaliburs?
Yeah.
They were made in Milwaukee.
Wow.
And apparently Randy Bachman and C.F. Turner showed up in full mink coats to buy a new awesome. Excalibur, and they got tickets to go to the show.
It sounds like about 1976.
Yeah.
Because
right.
How long are you wearing those mink coats?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she got to go see BTO.
Oh, that's
and I was like,
crazy.
no way! But it was just like
I never got to see them. I
never did.
Yeah.
But I was pleased as punch that a few years back he was using one of my amps. He wasn't.
I mean, we had that conversation.
Yeah.
You got his email? like
like,
Randy, if you're watching, big.
Yes.
Fan. Yes. We love him. I hear him on the Beatles XM channel. He and his son Tal. Have a Beatles program where they just geek out. You know, not unlike all of us, and just talk about the records and why they're so great. But they do a great job. They're cool.
Absolutely.
Hey now.
I was, with John Mayall dying the other day, I thought about one of my other first concerts was in 1982. John Mayall put together one of the incarnations of the Blues Breakers after many years, and it was so I saw at the Milwaukee Performing Arts Center. Me and some other young fledgling blues goons, as I like to say, we went and saw. It was John Mayall. Mick Taylor.
Oh, wow.
John McVie.
Damn.
And Colin Allen. So all members of
OG,
one of the original cast of characters
that's
from
amazing.
Back in the day. And it was awesome in the fact that, you're young, you're playing guitar, you're trying to figure out, well, who played this and how did they play it and this, that, next thing. I remember he played a twin and a 412 Marshall cabinet and plugged his Les Paul into that thing, and it sounded like the Word of God.
That's kind of like,
And I was always pleased by Mick Taylor because he just seemed to have just a little bit more harmonic knowledge than some of the other contemporary blues guys. You know what I mean? So if he did like a minor thing, it was more, he had a little bit more of a concept of, Dorian activity as opposed to just like straight minor.
That's why I love that Randy Bachman solo, because it's Dorian,
right?
But then it's Aeolian,
right?
And it makes sense, and it's got an emotional tug to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the knowledge of that and the manipulation.
Well, Randy was a student of Lenny Breau, from what I understand.
Okay, so and that for. He's getting his extensions going there.
Yes, exactly. For the kids.
For the kids, they love the pop radio. They love that. Oh, the minor ninth and the flat six. Yeah, absolutely. What was your first record you bought?
Well, the first record I bought with my own money was Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits.
Yeah, nice.
Because my brother had some good Hendrix records, but the first record I actually got into of Hendrix was the Cry of Love record, which was the first posthumously released.
Sure. Is that is Freedom on that one?
The Freedom's on there, and Easy Rider, and oh my God, that record blew my mind. Yeah. And then he had the 45 of Purple Haze.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I would listen to that.
Yeah.
And then he had the Band of Gypsies record. So that was my first kind of.
That's amazing, yeah.
And then he had Axis Bold as Love. I loved Axis Bold as Love. So I would listen to those records, but I didn't have.
That's my favorite.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, I think it just sonically in the band, Mitch Mitchell's just kind of hitting his stride. And
right.
Kind of.
The tunes are the best.
Yeah, it's just
and
it's so good. And you can't beat Axis Bold as Love. It's just one of the greatest.
Yeah, it's if I had to say my one Desert Island record, even though I hate that having to. Restricted to one.
Because then you need electricity on the desert.
Exactly.
Island. What are we going to do without?
You need a turntable.
I don't have one on me. But
right. Yeah. So, but that's
fantastic. These are good things.
Yeah. So, but I bought Smash Hits because I did not have Are You Experienced, and so I got that so I would get some of those records, some of those
Yeah,
tunes.
sure.
And but I went to Kmart. Went up to Kmart, ladies and gentlemen. I went to the record section.
Yeah.
And I said, "Where's that Jimmy?"
Attention Kmart shoppers.
And I got that sucker. I remember playing it on my parents' big old console. You know what I mean?
Oh, I have my parents' 1959 Motorola.
That's
Motorola
awesome.
in my. It's the old tube. I finally, as a kid, I was never curious enough to take off the back of it. So when it became in my possession about 10 years ago, I took the back off thinking maybe it needs fresh tubes. It's two AC-15s. It's like EL-84s and 12AX7s.
No kidding.
And no wonder I love this thing. It's fantastic.
That is awesome.
Incredibly, I had tubes to retube. We did.
Bing, bang,
Yeah,
boom.
but the turntable's slow. I can't use it that much, but I do love it. I remember my first Kmart memory was the day that Hey Jude came out. Now I'm 5 years old. It's 1968. And I was kind of crestfallen because the Beatles had that orange and yellow orange swirl label
Right,
with
I remember
Capitol.
that, yep.
And the Hey Jude came out on the Apple
label
for the first time.
Yeah.
So it's like it doesn't look like the Beatles. But of course, my brothers bought all those records in real time as they came out. So
yeah, we had a few of the 45s back at the Koch residence with my older siblings.
Yeah,
We had
yeah.
Day Tripper. And
oh yeah. Do you know the Nowhere Man solo was John and George plugged into the same AC-30 on their matching Sonic Blue Strats?
I think I had heard that.
Do you know that solo?
I don't.
Oh. I got to try it with a buddy of mine. We plugged in a couple of Strats on my AC. There it is, and they cranked extra treble on a Strat into an AC-30 at the board. That's why that's the most trebly
Thing of all time.
Well, it's one of my favorite guitar styles. In fact, the track that I did at Abbey Road this last couple of months ago, I was going for that sound. Dan Steinhardt brought me a 61 AC-30.
Oh!
I brought my 65 Strat. I plugged in. There it is.
And there it was.
And they had the original mic. They asked me what sounds I was going for. Oh, Beatles 64. They brought out the original mics. They still have those. They service those mics. They keep them. You rent the studio. You can do this.
It's insane.
It's not cheap, folks. But anyway, it was a great time.
I like it.
Yeah.
Should we make some more record?
Absolutely. I like racketeering. Yeah.
Well, we did kind of a thingy.
Whatever you want. I'm
Let's
following.
do a little shuffly thing.
You're the maestro.
Let's keep it easy.
I will follow my brother here. He's got to keep it simple for me, folks. Like we wrote it.
I like it.
Oh, come on now.
Well, it's fun to just keep it simple and let that sweet sangria flow. The depths of Mordor.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
So what are you playing there? What is this a new?
I have a brand new guitar. This called the ATZ 300. So I had a guitar in the mid 2000s called the AT 300. Which was a guitar I used on the Resolution record. So
okay, yeah.
Kind of a rock and roll machine because the mahogany body and those pickups were mounted directly into the body. So this is kind of a cross between that guitar. So this is mahogany, rosewood board obviously, but now I've got the pickups mounted in the pick guard. So it's kind of a cross between Old Faithful here.
Yeah.
But the mahogany just gives it a way bolder. But still has a nice, spanky thing.
Is this an alder beast?
That's an alder beast. Yeah, so that's classic old Leo kind of.
Right. Yeah, mahogany's got a thing.
It really does, man. So what is your guitar made?
This is actually Karina.
Oh, right on.
Which the real name of Karina is actually like, and I don't remember, but they make it sound a lot more. Shall we say, inviting by just saying it's Karina.
Okay, fair enough.
And
suitable for the public.
Yeah, and you know what I find about it, even though of course just mentioning tone woods causes a great controversy online.
Well, sure.
People are like, hey, wood has nothing to do with it. I'm like, okay, but if it does mean something to me in my squalid brain,
there you go. Yeah.
I kind of see ash here and mahogany here as far as like bright and then a little darker and
for
then
sure.
Karina's somewhere
right in the middle.
In the middle or somewhere.
Where's your alder? In that
I meant alder.
scale.
What did I say? No, I meant alder and ash.
Oh, okay.
And then in the middle is that's
gotcha.
what I meant. Sorry.
Fantastic. Okay.
Sorry. Sometimes
clarifying.
You know when we had those no-bake cookies and it's fogging my brain.
Because Thursdays at Sweetwater is
no-bake cookie, chocolate cookie day.
He made me eat one.
And they taste good. They taste like a giant Mr. Goodbar. Are you with me? Or are you with me?
Important stuff. We are about the food because. One Christmas I received in my mailbox, not really my mailbox, but my front porch, a Kringle.
Yes.
From Mr. Koch and his gracious family. And explain what that treat is, a Kringle.
Well, I think people have seen these in various different places. A Kringle is a circular Danish that looks like a giant O, and it's thin, and it's usually got some kind of fruit filling.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of, usually it's got a little bit of icing on the top of it. But make no mistake, folks, there is only one Kringle. It's O and H.
O and H.
Now, for those who don't live in Wisconsin, they occasionally have them at your local Trader Joe's.
I found it at the Trader Joe's and thought of you immediately and might have bought one. Bought one, yeah.
And the trick is, ladies and gentlemen, if you get one, first of all, the raspberry is my favorite. The pecan one's good. They're all good. The almond ones are good. I brought two here, by the way.
Oh, no.
And,
just what I need.
It's what I call Kringle diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen. I can solve all the world's problems. Just give me the credit card to buy unlimited O&H, and the world peace will manifest overnight. It's
so good to share the local thing that you do. Because I grew up in the Midwest here. I'm an Indiana boy. And so there's a potato chip company called Grippo's.
Oh yeah, and you sent me some of those.
Make the best barbecued chip anywhere, and they're still regional. But so I think I sent you some of those.
Magnificent.
So they are kind of the best. So we're just plugging different food products here at Sweetwater today.
We are. That's
O&H and Grippo's.
Let's talk a little bit about how you like to run gear, because I think we all kind of go through similar circumstances where. I like to set an amp where it's just on the verge of giving, and then I use the pedals. But that's not to say that, I don't know if you're the same way. I actually think that when you turn up an amp, like if you have a 2-channel amp, and you can get that other channel screaming, when you're recording it sounds awesome, but it just doesn't feel the same way live. I'm of the mindset where pedals feel better live. But amp sounds sound better in the stereo.
No, for sure. I feel like I have, because I've gone to more of a clean platform. It's just maybe on the edge.
Right.
Maybe a little right under it. It's a pretty, like if I go to my lead sound, there's the, my gain structure isn't quite the same because we're low volume here. But I feel like for live, I have a bit more control with the pedal. It feels like I can rein it in a bit more than the amp. It's a bit wilder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which sometimes is fun.
No, for sure, but yeah.
But if you want to do your full bag of stuff.
Well, that's the thing too. For obviously you and somewhat me, that there's a variety of tones we're going for in the course of a night. We can't have, six amps on stage.
Exactly.
To be able to get all that through the one amp,
Right.
Here we have these great assortment. You've got a lovely all-in-one here.
Yes, which I just got.
It's quite glorious.
The new Jam Koch Monster.
It's really amazing. It's really amazing, yeah.
And it's been an interesting thing because I went with not using any pedals for a while, just plugging straight in the amp because the amp ahead kind of did everything I needed it to do.
Yeah.
But as I said, it just feels better when you hit that overdrive.
Yeah.
Boom! And plus, it just responds so much better if you want to do some delays and worry about effects loops.
There's all that with the effects loops for sure.
And
dig it.
But yeah, it's an interesting, it's a never-ending quest, isn't
it? But that's why we're here. That's why you're watching. That's why I'm happy to be sitting next to one of the greatest players ever. Because we just, we love it so much, and we're still chasing and learning,
Well, I tell you what, as I was talking about we were talking about it earlier today, is just the fact that, I get up in the morning and the first thing I want to do is, say hello to my lovely wife.
Of course you got it.
Get the coffee. Yeah. I grab my guitar and I start doing the do.
People ask me what's your regimen. My happy place is exactly that. Coffee first.
Yep.
Yeah, I go to my office and I've got my rig. I've got a couple of Lone Stars and some Sir IRs. So I've got a good tone even in my office.
Right.
I've got my usual array of effects and whatnot. And I just play. If I start my day like that, it sets me up for a good day.
Totally.
I can just get a bit of time on the instrument. And then because of our careers, we're having to handle so much of all the business and things.
Yes.
It's not just about playing the instrument. But then
as much as we wish it was.
Of course. But then it gives you that time like, okay, great. I've got a good start here. Then wherever the day goes, it may be a gig or a session or whatever. But that's the way, folks. You just got to keep playing.
Well, that's fact.
That is the fact.
And I just every day it's enjoyable, and it keeps you. It's interesting because we're getting about the age where a lot of our people that we grew up with and whatnot, they're retiring.
Yeah,
and they're going down.
I'm just feeling like we're getting started.
Right. It's like, how could I ever stop doing what I love to do?
And why would you? I always feel bad for the sports, the athletes and stuff.
Right, because they
work their whole life.
They
just it's not in the cards. So we're very fortunate. We saw Les Paul when he was 90.
Yeah, exactly.
Still gigging and doing a great job. And we see Mick out there who's 20 years my older.
He's 81.
He's killing. He's doing so good out there. So there's hope,
There is hope.
For youngsters and oldsters. You just got to keep doing it.
That's a fact.
That's always the key, right?
That is. Although I find that I'm not as, I don't know about you, but I should probably be better about finding new music, but I find as the older I get, I find older stuff that I didn't get
backwards.
hip to. Like, hey, I wasn't really hip to this the first time around. Right. God, this is awesome.
Django was that way for me. I didn't really appreciate it as a kid because it wasn't distorted guitar.
Well, and plus it sounds sonically. It
sounded old and different. But now I go back and just marvel at what he accomplished and how he did it.
What the thing is that as much people get into Django's shreddy stuff.
Yeah.
I just love his vibrato.
Oh, his vibrato's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
It's so glorious.
It's absolutely gorgeous, man.
And one of my favorite things, I'm sure you're hip to this, but there are some recordings of when he came to America and toured with Duke Ellington.
Yeah,
and he's playing the electric.
Yes.
And it's kind of taken off a little bit.
Oh, yeah. There's a recording from '51 of him it's a radio broadcast. I think it's in France. Possible would make sense. But he's got is it a Selmer mic?
Yeah.
Okay, he's got that, and it's distorted.
It's given, yeah.
And there's a sax line. It's called Impromptu. I'll give you the link, or we'll check it out. But it sounds like Stern. It's fusiony.
Yeah.
Like full on. It's like, oh my God, there's that sound, and it's 1951, and it's Django.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was pretty incredible.
And the thing that's so weird is that as much as I love all the other, original jazz guitar greats, Tal Farlow, and Charlie Christian, and
Barney Kessel guy,
and Barney Kessel, and
Wes,
all of them,
yeah,
Grant Green, so on and so forth. But what's so great about what Django portended was that he wasn't afraid to bend notes. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, hey, It's all on the table.
Herb Ellis got there eventually, but and I love Herb Ellis' straight ahead playing. But when they started bending strings, we were kids like, oh man,
it's like,
it wasn't. But I was again looking for something else at the time.
Exactly.
Still love, man. Speaking of Herb Ellis, the shining era for that Oscar Peterson trio with Ray Brown.
Oh yeah.
There's a live record called Live at the Shakespearean Festival. It's done in Canada.
I have that record.
I think it's the swingingest record ever made.
It's glorious.
I think it's.
I had that. That was one of the first CDs I ever bought.
Herb Ellis' time and chord changes and the arrangements are insane.
Yeah.
There's the liner notes were like, Ray and Herb used to room together because they'd have to shed all night trying to remember the stuff.
Oh, I believe it.
Because Oscar would come up with those complicated. I noticed throughout the 70s and 80s they started like taming down the arrangements.
Right.
It's like, we can't remember all this stuff. Yeah.
Speaking of which, how do you maintain your repertoire of stuff? I mean, one of the things you meant, it's one of the things I might do when I wake up in the morning is I might go, I haven't played this one in a while. I should probably go through it.
That's interesting you say that because I'm thinking that I need to do that more because I realize I'm having a harder time remembering something if I haven't played it for a while.
Right.
That's just a natural part of aging, I think.
Right.
But I tend to be obsessing about, because if I'll practice for a bit, then I'm obsessing about a composition. And I'll play that composition sometimes for a couple weeks and just really, really hone in on it until I get all the details the way I want it.
Yeah.
So it can go in any direction, but of course if there's a show coming up, then okay, I'm all in and you learn what you got to learn. But that's a thing I want to focus on more. Just making sure I can at any moment pull up any of these tunes.
Right. It's hard sometimes.
No, it's a lot of it. Even if you wrote it, it's like there's a lot of information to retain. Overall, I do well. I can retain pretty much, but sometimes I realize I'm doing it by ear. Sometimes I say that's not the fingering. I played the right thing, but that's not quite the way it was recorded. I've had to go back and transcribe.
Oh, I'm with you.
It's like how the heck did I?
Do you ever find that all of a sudden you'll play something you've played a million times, and you haven't played it for a while, and then you'll play it and you're like cruising along, and then all of a sudden it'll cross your mind, oh, what was that next part again?
Yeah.
And it's gone.
Yeah. That
and
is
like,
real.
What the hell?
Maybe memory almost full. It's like we've been through a few gigs, but it's understandable, man.
That's right. There's only so much.
I remember being at the first time I met Steve Morse and got to play with him was Thoroughbred Music years ago.
Oh, I remember that.
Long defunct.
Yep.
But they used to do their mini trade shows, and it was one of those things where Rod Morgenstein and Dave LaRue were the house band.
I remember that. Yeah.
Steve Morse was there. Ace Frehley was there. Vinnie Moore. So I was there. So I got to play with Ace Frehley and Steve Morse in the same night.
Awesome.
But I remember we were backstage before playing that night, and I was telling Steve, oh man, I'm such a fan. I used to play Cruise Control. He goes, oh wow, you still know it? And yeah, luckily I did.
Right.
And we played it that night. But I remember also that Steve was standing next to Dave, and they were going to play a tune, and he was asking Dave about his own composition. And he said to me, he's like, yeah, he knows my songs better than I do. So we're not in bad company.
Right.
So to speak. But Steve is just such a unique, obviously as a player.
Right.
As a player, he stands on his own. But it's his voice as a writer.
Oh no, it's insane.
It's so uniquely him. That nobody thinks about music like that. It's just so stunning.
That was another one of my first concerts was when he toured right after the Dregs were done. So the introduction tour with Jerry Peak on bass.
Oh my God.
And it was at the Palms.
What was that? Cruise Missile? Was that the opening
Cruise
track?
Missile, yeah.
Oh my God.
And then on the pipe, and then General Lee was on there with Albert Lee.
Oh God. That was great.
And I remember I just stood. I was like right in front of him, like because he set up in the middle, and then Rod Morrison was over here, and then Jerry Peak was over here, and I just sat there, and I just like, how is this possible?
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for hanging out.
Absolutely. A good time as you.
Fun.